Hi there, it's Tracey De Wet from traceydewet.com, and in this video I'd like to just talk about how your subconscious mind can release this deep-seated anxiety response. So what happens is all these issues that people have, phobias, fears, anything that causes that fear response. Obviously, there are a lot of genuine ones. If you're walking across the road, you need to be scared, or else you'd walk out in front of a vehicle. Nobody wants that. So you need a certain amount of fear in your life. It's there to keep you safe, and it's been there since you were born, basically. It develops after the first year of life, and the more we encounter the world, the more our brain quickly learns all these responses. Now, when we are younger and we're developing, that's when these responses are learned very quickly. The brain is like a little sponge, and it takes in all this information, millions and millions of bits of data very quickly, and puts together this what's called a schema, or an internal picture of the world around us, and what's good, what's bad, what's dangerous, and what isn't. Now, your survival instinct is kind of primitive. It's part of the primitive reptilian part of our brain. And so it can get triggered without thinking. It just gets triggered because of some sort of perception that comes in normally from your senses. And apart from that, all other fears are learned. They're learned. When you were a little kid, you would, if a snake had come in the room, or a big spider, or some sort of creature, whatever, you would have been more curious about it than fearful of it. You would have gone up to a big dog and, touched it, not a problem. Picked up a snake, probably tried to taste it, put it in your mouth or whatever, with no fear whatsoever. And it's that the reaction of other people around us that embed that object with a fear, and that's what we take forward into life. And obviously lots of that is good, like don't cross the road, like don't touch that thing because it's hot and it'll burn, don't touch that, it's sharp. But we start to get that message against all sorts of other things as well. And I find that with people who are perfectionists, when they're older, they probably grew up with parents that were quite pernickety and quite sort of fussy about smallish things, and so they had quite a strong reaction to them making a mess, or behaving out of turn and stuff like that. And all of these things get associated with danger, and they cause anxiety when you're stepping out of those parameters that you've been taught when you were little. And this is all subconscious programming, because it goes in there into an area of the brain that controls the rest of us as well, that controls all of the stuff that we never think about. And that's why we don't think, well, we don't have time to think when that initial anxiety response is triggered. We don't have time to think. It's just upon us, and then we realize there must be something to be scared of, and we start thinking about why we're scared. And of course, while we're thinking about being scared, the realization hits us, and then that causes an even deeper or more profound panic response. So the way out of this is deep subconscious work, and it happens when the brain wave state is in a particular pattern, and at that point it feels like it's quite a relaxed state, but it's also quite focused on the things that we work on in hypnosis. So we actually work on these things. And the great thing about hypnosis is that you don't even have to say, you don't have to mention all the nitty-gritty or even understand why something's happening. You certainly don't have to tell the hypnotherapist. We don't really need to know that stuff. It's good to know the gist of it, just so that we can point you in the right direction. But we don't need to know the gory details of what may have happened or what you think may have happened, because all of this is perception after all. In this relaxed brainwave state, it's easier to accept the subconscious, for the subconscious to accept new suggestions. And what we try and get you to do is make those connections, and then give the suggestion that these are no longer necessary, and your subconscious can basically stand down, almost like a soldier off duty. You don't have to be so hyper vigilant for this, because this is a very old pattern and it's no longer helpful. So you can drop it and go and concentrate on other things. And it's quite a gentle process, because the subconscious does not like being bullied. It needs to feel relaxed. It needs to feel that it's that it's not being pushed or manipulated. We have to have a very gentle approach, so it can make those associations and let go of them itself. It also doesn't like to be given a time limit. And that's one of the things that when I do my sessions with clients, it's like you need that 2 hours uninterrupted. I need you to not be worrying about, how you're going to get, what's going to happen afterwards. Is it time to make dinner? Are the kids home? Is this going on? Is that going on? You just need those 2 hours totally uninterrupted, so we can actually get you to the state that is necessary. And this can be different for different people, by the way. It's not exactly the same for everybody. Some people, change can take place really quickly and a fairly shallow sense of relaxation. Some people need longer time to get into this state so that these changes can be made. So we don't want to be bullying the subconscious. The other thing is that we are looking at not testing once you've had a session. So let's say somebody's come in and it's for social anxiety. They don't like eating out. When they go out and eat, they get very anxious for whatever reason. We work on that and they're feeling a heck of a lot better. And when they're in the session, it's great. Can you think about this? What happens when you think about it? No, I'm fine. I'm fine to go out. If you then go out and you're constantly sitting there thinking, am I feeling as I used to feel? Can I just, and it's almost like you're tugging at the edges of this problem that you had in a way to try and test and see if it's still there. What I would say is don't do that, because you'll start to reconnect that pathway that we've just disconnected. If you go looking for something, you'll find it. For instance, if I asked you not to think of a big white dog, what's the first thing that's just come to mind? A big white dog. So you have to think of something in order not to think of something. And when you do that way around, the brain goes on what we call a transderivational search, and it's going to look for these things. So not in the beginning, don't go and test it all the time. Don't keep wondering if it's actually gone. Just make up your mind that it has gone. And if you get some sort of niggles around the edge, some sort of evidence that it might not be gone, don't think about it in that way. Say it's a lot less than it was before and just push it away. Don't need to think about it. You don't need to keep on testing it. That is really not what your subconscious wants. The other thing is overthinking. So there is this saying that analysis is paralysis. Now, I know this is difficult because a lot of people with heightened anxiety, it normally does happen to those people who are intelligent, overthinkers anyway, perfectionists, people who are like normally quite driven and quite successful. And you're used to this thinking pattern, overthinking it. But please just take it from me, who is an overthinker and one of those kind of people. Don't overthink it, because you cannot think your way through the problem. All you're going to do is keep triggering it. You can't think your way through it, because you're using your conscious, rational, logical mind to try and work something out that's in your subconscious mind, which is the opposite of all of that. So when you're constantly analyzing it and thinking about it, you're not releasing this. You're holding on to it with all your might. And what I would say to anybody in hypnosis, if you are an overthinker, I know exactly what it feels like for you. You're going to have this train of thought. You're going to have this, what I call mind chatter, this very difficult to tone, this rational mind that's looking for the answers, because that's how you get through life, right? That's what makes you successful. That makes who you are. Is you need to just tone it down and just go, yeah, but I don't need to think about that now. Interesting point, but it's not relevant now. And just keep pushing those thoughts to the side, just gently, not fighting with them, just going, thank you for that, but it's not important at the moment, so I'd rather not think about it. So yeah, we don't want constant analysis of the program, because it's just bringing back all of those bits and reconnecting them again, and we're just reversing all the great work that we've done in actually breaking it apart. Yes, and we talked about the time limit, that we need to have the time in order to allow your system to get to the right level of the trance state in order for these changes to take place. And yeah, don't be in any huge, big rush. And what I would say is that if you're going for hypnotherapy, check and see how long the session is, or how long it can go on for, because there is this tradition with counseling and talking therapies that it's basically, you're paying for an hour of their time, or the session is an hour. And quite often it turns out being less than that, because if you're going to see somebody physically, you'll go in, you'll greet, maybe take off your coat, sit down, have a little chat. You then have the session. Few minutes before, it's like, okay, well, my time is up, time to put your coat back on again, get up and get out of here, kind of thing. If you're with anybody who's limiting your time for an hour, find somebody else, because the hour usually is not long enough, in my opinion and my experience. An hour and a half, an hour and 40 minutes. The longest time I've ever had anybody in hypnosis, in a healing session, or a proper session where we're trying to overcome a particular problem, is about 2.5 hours. I've never had anybody go in hypnosis or need to be in hypnosis for longer than that. It's better to have another session. But 1 hour, or being limited to an hour, to me simply is not the best way to get the best results. So that's one thing you need to look out for. So working with the subconscious mind, what does that even feel like? Well, we all go into hypnosis at least twice a day. We go in and out of that trance state a lot. And it's every time that you're trying to remember something, trying to picture something out of your brain, you're going what we call going internal. If I say to you, close your eyes and picture a big box. It's got green on one side, blue on the other, and the other two sides are red and yellow. You're making that up. Your imagination is having to recreate that box. Think of those colors, its squares, its shapes, it's the way it's put together. That is the internal state. And that's the state that we're working with. And you go into that state naturally quite a few times a day. But the two significant ones are when you're falling asleep And when you're waking up, you're in that sort of what we call the hypnagogic, is when you're falling asleep, and the hypnopompic is when you're waking up. And you're aware of your surroundings, but you're in that lovely relaxed state where you might still be dreaming or still remember your dreams as well. It's very similar. It's around about there. I think it's the theta brainwave pattern or measurement. And that's what we'd be aiming to get you into in therapy. And that's where the subconscious mind can be accessed. And only you can do it. No other therapist can force this on you. You're constantly in control of that. And so that's one of the other things, is if you're paying to see a hypnotherapist, please just don't stress about it. But one of the main things you need to do is just to try and relax during the session, because the more you can relax, the better outcome you're going to have, because it's just easier to let go of things. It's just easier to make these subconscious connections and change them. So I hope that's given you a bit more information. Please look at or like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, or just go and have a look at it. It's Tracey De Wet. And yeah, down there is a whole load of hints and tips and more information about my specialist subject, which is anxiety and hypnotherapy, of course. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.